Hello and welcome to another episode of CRT Sound System. Here with episode 79, and we're talking about Shadow Hearts. Here with, as always, with Reese. Reese, how are you?
Oh, I'm very grouchy. I'm currently in. I've been absolutely fucking debuffed by my fire alarm going off repeatedly last night. As I mentioned before the show, it's insane. There's something in my apartment that can just be that loud, no matter what. And like I get it. They don't want us to die in a fire, and I'm not against the idea of it. It's just really upsetting. And it was like it's both times. It was just like, oh, the fire system, has a weird battery, and there's nobody on duty till Monday. Seems to be the issue, anyways.
Oh, fun.
Anyway,
Um,
sorry. Yeah, video games and yeah, I'm here. I love to podcast.
yeah. Well, I feel like perhaps the noise of that opening track maybe was maybe a bit much for you. 'Cause, yeah, we're here with a guest as well. We've got Shannon returning. How are you?
I am alive and very excited to talk about one of my favorite PS2 RPGs,
Mm.
actually.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, definitely in the pantheon for me of like best PS2 RPGs for sure. Possibly only bettered by its sequel, to be quite honest. But yeah, we're talking about Shadow Hearts. Now I'm super familiar with Shadow Hearts, but because I love this game. But for our listeners, Shannon, if you want to just talk briefly about what Shadow Hearts is.
Yeah, of course. Shadow Hearts is actually kind of a sequel, kind of not, to the PS1 game that I'm sure so many people know, called Kodelka. Uh, and by that I mean not as many people. Um, but it's a game that is really kind of focused on taking the horror genre and the RPG genre and mixing them together. And it leads to a really jarring, wild experience that I think the soundtrack does a good job of representing because there's
Mm,
just a lot going on. It's chaotic, and you have these sharp, intense noises, and the gameplay design is very similar in that way, where a lot's going on and the plot has a lot going on, and it just coalesces into this really interesting, unique experience that I don't really get with other things, which is part of why I love Shadow Hearts as a
yeah.
game. Yeah.
My understanding, having not played Shadow Hearts, but looking at stuff before the podcast, is that there's a lot of kind of like side content around the Judgment Ring, and you're really just playing a rhythm game with the Judgment Ring. And sometimes horror related stuff happens behind the Judgment Ring. Confirmed, deny.
Yeah, more or less.
There's a lot of
um,
Judgment Ring stuff going on for sure, yeah.
yeah, the Judgment Ring is probably like the marquee mechanic for the game. Like, just because it does come not just in combat but in like mini games and stuff like that. Like, there's just it is
I
part of the
I
sort of universe as such.
mhm.
Go on.
No, it was just funny watching stuff and just being like, oh, there's this cool timing mechanic for the combat, and I'm like,
Mm,
oh, we're doing the Judgment Ring in shops now to get like a 20%
to get a
discount or
discount.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm being facetious, of course, but
No, I mean, but
I
you're
like
right.
the
It's like
Judgment Ring.
it's one of those things where like it seems like the whole world is in the whole world they've created is around this judgment ring. Like, as I say, everything you do, to some degree, has this sort of like, um, yeah, you just end up sort of manipulating the judgment ring in some way, and they really expand upon it in the second game, um, to like basically like you can just customize the judgment ring to the way you want it to be, including just having it be invisible so that you constantly do critical hits. there's like a bunch of stuff you can do to just manipulate the judgment ring in the second game, and like it is a weird sort of, it's such a central mechanic to the whole game. It's quite interesting, and it does play into the plot to a degree as well. Like it doesn't sort of like manifest in the world as such, but it does feel like the world is being shaped by it in this weird way. And it's like it's such a unique mechanic. I don't think any other game that, like, a bunch of games have tried like timing mechanics for like RPGs, but you never really quite get something like this where it's just fully part of the world.
Yeah, no, the Judgment Ring is a very interesting design choice because, like you said, they kind of throw it in and people will just bring it up like it's normal to
Yeah,
talk about this video game mechanic in the world. And
yeah,
it's part of what makes it work so well is it doesn't, at first it seems off, but then everybody just makes it seem so normal that you're just like, okay, that's fine. I guess this person just walks around and tinkers with this ring when people buy stuff. Okay. That's I guess that's how that works.
yeah. I suppose to explain the mechanic as well, it's just like it is quite literally like a little ring pops up on your screen and spins around, and you just have like a hit section, a miss section, and then like a critical section. Um, and like whether you're doing like combat moves, using items in combat, each of them has like a different layout. Some of them have like larger hit areas, some of them have large crit areas and stuff like that. So like not every judgment ring is the same. And uh, if I remember rightly, all the characters have different judgment rings. I'm not sure if maybe that's
Yes.
more in the second game, but like you learn the timings for each person, and like you can also equip items that will make like certain segments of it larger or smaller, or take them away to like give different effects as well. As I said, that's expanded a lot more in the second game. But yeah, it really is the sort of the central mechanic that sort of underpins the whole game in a really interesting way.
Absolutely. And I know that this podcast is focused on Shadow Hearts, but it was an interesting evolution from Kodelka to this
Mm,
game because that one went for more of I would say more of an out of the box RPG fighting system because
yeah.
Kakuda didn't want to just do an RPG, so you can move around on the field during a fight, and it's very position based, and it also takes a very long time
Oh my goodness.
to,
I
to
played the
do
PAL
anything.
version of that, and I've never finished it because it's just every battle takes so long.
Yeah, it does, but it's fun to see the evolution, and a big part of that evolution is because Kakuda left after Kodelka from the company he made to make video games because he didn't like how that was happening. Um, but oh yeah, that's another thing. The series was basically started by the guy that made the Secret of Mana soundtrack,
Mm.
which is fun.
Yeah, because he did the
Yeah,
soundtrack for
absolutely.
Kudelka, but never went on to do this one, did he?
Yeah, I think he helped a little with production in the game, but I don't think he did anything with the soundtrack. The soundtrack
Yeah.
was who was it? It was
It's,
Hirota, right?
Yoshitaka Hirota.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've mentioned him before, in fact, just because uh, he's in the Black Mages, if I remember right.
Oh.
Um, Yeah, and like he's a bass player, and like you can really hear it in this soundtrack. Like there's so many like really bassy, like just it's full of like bass licks in such a funny way. Like, and again, it's just part of this weird sort of fabric of this game that it's all over the place stylistically and tonally, and along with that, and like you heard it in the opening track as well. You've just got this sort of there's such a rock sound to it in places, but also sort of contrasting with these sort of very heavily atmospheric pieces as well. Um,
Hmm.
and Yasunori Mitsuda also worked on the soundtrack along with Masahiro Iwata and Ryo Fukuda, but it's mostly Hirota who's on this one. Um, but like you can definitely hear the Mitsuda in his tracks as well. Like they are unmistakably Yasunori Mitsuda. It is interesting, I suppose, that like a game coming from sort of such a musical background, I suppose, given the fact that like the person who created the company was a musician himself, sort of has this rhythm element to it.
Yeah.
I find that quite interesting. Just as a little aside.
I had read, I don't know how true this is, that Hirota was more of a sound effects uh person before he composed the Shadow Heart soundtrack. So it was sort of a big segue for his career to be like, all right, take over for this legend. And it's maybe not your first job, but it's your biggest job to date. And yeah, I don't know. There wasn't much of a conclusion to that. I enjoyed the soundtrack, but I think that it has a good mix of vibes, and considering the horror vibe of Shadow Hearts, which seemed to have this sort of dichotomy of like Lovecraftian stuff and kind of Eastern horror, I think it's doing a lot of interesting things, and I am totally unfamiliar with this game before this podcast, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm excited to learn more on this episode from the two experts.
uh, okay, so I am going to correct myself. It wasn't the Black Mages he's in; it's Earthbound Papas he's in. So the other Nobuo Uematsu band. um, but yeah, I suppose it's worth mentioning, Reese, as you sort of brought it up tangentially, just like the setting of this game. Like when I first played this, I was fascinated by the fact that there was like a JRPG set in the real world and like set in pre-war Europe and everything. It's like I think it starts in like 1917, if I'm right. Shannon, back me up on that.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, it's
I have
like
to.
just after the First World War and sort of like in between the two. But it's just such a fascinating sort of setting for a game, and like then you have obviously those sort of like Lovecraftian elements coming in, and then sort of the main villain being Aleister Crowley, who is sort of like a historical figure um, of like. He was like a magician, and like I feel like most of it is mythological at this stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like
Reading
go ahead.
reading between the lines, sorry to interrupt, but reading between the lines about Aleister Crowley and history, it seems like a legendarily historical annoying person.
Yeah,
Like all timer top three most annoying people. Not like bad or evil, although I'm sure that could be involved as well. But just somebody that you're just like, I cannot fucking believe this dude showed up. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and actually, the main antagonist for most of the first game is quote unquote Roger Bacon.
Oh yes, yes.
Um,
Sorry, not Roger. Yeah, apologies. Not yeah, Roger Bacon. Apologies. Yeah, with the fake Roger Bacon.
the fake Roger Bacon, where if you played Kodelka, you'd be really confused if you saw this Roger Bacon, because the one in Kodelka is a little imp man. He's a weird little fella. And the one in Shadow Hearts that you see is like a well-dressed individual in a suit that is absolutely not a little freako, right? So so that was interesting. But yeah, no, the to just help collaborate on the setting, it takes place, I believe, in 1913 to start with. And
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
yeah,
Maybe it's
and
the second one
then
then that goes to 1917. Go on.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Sorry.
second one takes place 1915, 6 months after the first game.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one that takes place in World War One is Covenant. Whereas the first one takes place a little bit before the First World War. And
Mm.
a big part of that is actually part of the plot because of Yuri's dad and everything, but that's getting a little too in the weeds, I think.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. it is interesting as well, just sort of like the way it does weave sort of like historical people and is it this game or the second game where you have like the the Tsarina of Russia, whatever her name is. That's the second game, I think, isn't it?
Oh, Anastasia, yeah.
Yeah, you got Anastasia. Um, yeah, and it's just very weird because like you end up with like vampires in your party, as well, and like the main character Yuri can like turn into a monster, um, but then like you meet people who are real people from history. You meet like Mata Hari at places and things like that. It's a really sort of interesting setting because it's constantly sort of referencing the real world, but you never really get a sense that it is set in the real world. It's a very alternate history sort of vibe to it, I think.
Yeah, it's part of what makes it really fun is it is in the real world, but it's a really like standoffish real world. It's like those paintings where there's this painter that I like, Richard Dad, where all of his stuff seems like it's in the real world, but something is just a little wrong. Like that
Mm.
bench might have teeth or something, and everything else just looks really normal, but that one thing is just a little off. And Shadow Hearts does a really good job of really capturing that.
Mm.
And you brought up the vampires. It's a wonderful thing to talk about. In the first one, you just get this guy that's just a vampire, and everyone's just okay with him. What was his name? Like Keith? Yeah.
Keith, yeah.
And everyone's just like, oh, he's just Keith, and he's absolutely absurd. And then it gets even more absurd in the second game with
Mm.
his brother Yohim, who's a wrestler and just walks around picking up random things on the ground to swing at people. And everyone's just like, oh, he just picked up a marlin. That's fine. He's just
Yeah.
going to use that as a weapon. Or his ultimate weapon, which is a little spaceship with a bunch of little people living inside of it that he beats people up with. And everyone just treats it completely normal. No one freaks out about any of this stuff, but they talk about it like it's just an everyday occurrence. It's like if you met somebody in the real world and they're just talking while eating dirt and looking at you like it's the most normal thing in the world, you know?
Yeah, that is absolutely the vibe of this game, and it's to its credit that it manages to sort of have such a thematically dark story, and like there's a lot of like bad shit going on in it, but it also the way it veers into the silly, without really breaking stride is yeah, like there's is it this yeah, it's the second game again. A lot of my memories are more towards the second game, annoyingly, but like just like there's Geppetto, who in order to power his weapons is you have to collect gay smut and give them to some guy.
Yeah.
Who then powers up your puppet for you, I believe is the way that
Excuse
sequence
me?
goes.
Yes.
Excuse me?
Yeah. That's how that goes.
You didn't read about that.
Yeah, you collect part of the like just in the world you just collect gay little like postcards of gay porn, because like again that was a real thing where like in order to get around like obscenity laws people would distribute porn on postcards. So like this guy in the game just sort of is like, if you find any of gay porn, please bring it to me and I'll reward you handsomely for it. And then that ends up being sort of your upgrade path for this character. um and again, this is the game with the luchador vampire. So not the most normal game in the world, but just again like the way it sort of it has these such dark themes, and then it sort of switches between that and silliness in again without like breaking stride or really winking at the camera or sort of making it seem like they're doing something they shouldn't. It's a really interesting tightrope to walk.
Absolutely. And I feel the soundtrack does the same thing. Even with the
Mm,
first track that we listened to, it went
yeah,
from like this moody atmospheric thing to industrial to rock to moody again. And you're like, whoa,
yeah.
what's happening?
Yeah, it's absolutely, yeah. It's a great soundtrack, and it's like it really does sort of managed to sort of swap between those sort of like tones really really well. I suppose with that we'll jump into the first block of tracks. So I have to start off. Most of these are by Yoshitaka Hirota, except for one, which is by Yoshitaka Hirota and Yasunori Mitsuda. So we have the first track is China Map, quote unquote, blow up. Europe Map, quote unquote, atmosphere blow up. Then Daily Life 2, quote unquote, trip or treat. Then we have Graveyard, quote unquote, Graveyard Moon. And last one is Castle of the Mad Gods 2, quote unquote, Star Shape. some really good tunes there. Yeah, the Castle of the Mad Gods too. That was one of your selections, Shannon. But yeah, it's such an interesting tune. Just sort of like it is such a straightforward backbeat to it, and it's just like just like a little bit of a techno beat going on, but like and just that with that as well, it's just got a really nice, just like the vibe you were saying, it just sort of envelops you. Yeah, it's really really good. But then like you've got by contrast then the Graveyard, which is like barely a song, but is also like incredibly atmospheric and sort of really leans into those horror elements that this game sort of has in spades.
I find this soundtrack to be like incredibly solid. I don't have the same sort of familiarity with the game, but I do kind of enjoy the mood that is being set for each one, and I never feel like any track is going like absolutely crazy, but I feel like it feels like the perfect setting for whatever I imagine is going on. And then when I watch like let's play footage, it feels like incredible scene setting music that's also, wonderfully composed and nice to listen to on its own.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, the it's hard to say just because like this it's we talked about the sort of the tonal stuff in the game being so sort of strong part of its identity, and like absolutely the music sort of reinforces that in a really strong way. But even at that, like you still have stuff like the like the map themes, which are relatively straightforward. Um, and like the sort of the music that, or sorry, the instruments sort of evoke their where you are in the world. It's like it's interesting because it's like it's not a game with a world map as such. Like it doesn't have like a Final Fantasy VII style world map, let's say, where you are traveling. It's just you see a little sort of paper map that has the little nodes on it. I forget if even you are like to travel between those nodes, probably at certain points. But it's just like it really just gives you that sense of movement and traveling with those tunes, even though like you're literally just looking at a screen and selecting where you're going next.
Yeah, it's you just pick a place and you go there, but the map sounds do a good job of setting the tone for the area. And we went through both the China and the Europe map, and that's something I wanted to talk about is you can kind of cut the soundtrack in half. Whereas the first half of the game takes place in China and the second half takes place over various places in Europe. And the Chinese soundtrack tries to use some more traditional tones using various flutes. I think they have a zither here and there, if I remember correctly. But for sure, they use the flute to create, that sound that every video game uses when they have a Chinese town or something. But I think they do a very good job of cutting it into chunks for having a good song to kind of tie together where they're at atmospherically in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's sort of such an interesting aspect of it. Like, we talked about the real world setting, but like the fact that you're just traveling all over China and Europe and, just like going to Wales in a video game seems like such a bizarre thing to do. But it's like a primary plot point is that you have to go to Wales. Is that where the real Roger Bacon is hanging out? He just, I think if that's where you meet him, but just like you go to this monastery in Wales, like, you just meet this weird little gremlin of a man.
I don't know if this is true at all, but I do feel like Wales must have had a much more psychically important role in culture in World War II, more so than it does today. I have no historical information to back that up. It's just got to be true. So it makes sense to me that they go to Wales.
Perhaps, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and it's like the second game does it as well, but sort of in reverse because you start off in Germany, and then end up in Japan, um, and it's just sort of like a reverse sort of traveling across the world to it. So the plot wise, I suppose. We'll not go too deep in it, but something you mentioned towards the end of the last block, Shannon, was just Yuri's backstory, which I think is absolutely bonkers, and I completely forgot about it until you brought it up. So I want you to spoil that for everyone. If you want to play this game, spoilers. But Shannon,
I'm
explain the
glad that
spoiler.
you're asking, Tom, because I was about to ask, and I was going to frame it in a much more coarse manner. So, Teeps, the floor is yours.
All right, so you learn about this more in the second game, but in the first game, Yuri is part of this bloodline of harmixers that can fuse with demons, and that's his main focal point. And it's really tied into the plot. There's a lot of him fighting himself and becoming a complete person. And you go into the second game, and you meet this character who's a main part of it. And goodness. Turns out that in the first game, I forgot something that's very important. You have the main love interest named Alice. Yuri and Alice love each other. In the good ending, in the first game, she stays alive, but in the canon ending, which takes place and then Covenant happens 6 months later, Alice dies. And he's trying to find a way to fix that, maybe, or do something. Now, why is that important to talking about this? It's because Karen, who is, you can almost call her like the co-main character of the second game, ends up falling in love with Yuri as they're going and trying to fix this evil plot happening and save the world from demons. But he's so in love with Alice that he's not going to ever be with anybody else. So, what would any good self-serving person do in this situation? Well, you go back in time and fuck his dad and become his mother. And that is how you do that.
Oh my
I honestly, the ultimate way to mog somebody, being like, oh yeah, I'll show you. You'll be my son now, idiot.
Yeah, so when I
bonkers.
first finished that,
Yeah.
I was staring at the screen because I'm like, okay, they're doing time stuff so he can go back and meet Alice. And then that happens, and I'm like, oh, okay, the only reason he exists is because this woman then has like vengeance sex with his dad. Cool.
Absolutely, yeah. And it doesn't really feel like, yeah, I don't know. I remember finishing it in my cousin's living room, and just being like, because I was just staying with him for a few weeks at the time, and like just being like, what the fuck? What have I just seen? And like in a game with so much bizarre shit going on in it, it was one of the few things that I was like, this does not feel like congruent even with all of the other shit going on in the game. But yeah, I guess they had to do something to close that loop. Because like the whole thing of his mother is important to him throughout the whole sort of thing, and he has these battles with himself, and like also his father is part of that too. Like you go into these sort of dungeons where you have to fight yourself, or I guess are they dungeons? I suppose they're not dungeons, but they're just like little sort of dramatic battles, you could call them, where you technically can't really lose them, but they're just like, they're how you like power up him, and like a lot of that is just sort of him learning to be, as you said, Shannon, like to be a complete person. Like that's sort of part of his whole arc, and it just feels like a weird rug pull at the end to just be like, and now this. Yeah, it's just very odd.
Yeah, it's like because the whole time he's cursed and you're trying to fight it, and then at the end of the fight, the curse starts to completely take root, and Yuri's like, well, if I die, I can meet Alice's spirit and stuff, so I'm just gonna do that. And Karen just gets sent back to Tokyo when his dad is alive, And here's when the dots connect, because she looks kind of similar the whole time if you played the first game when it shows her mom, but the names are different. Well, she just changes her name to his mother's name, Anne, at the end of the game. And then I'm like, oh, they did not. And I looked at it and I'm like, they absolutely did. That's yeah, she's like, oh, I can't be with him. I guess I'll be with the next best choice.
Yeah. Bonkers.
God. That's
right. I suppose I kind of want to talk about Sacknot, the developers, because like there's not a lot to say about them, but I just like they essentially only made this series and like 2 games for the Neo Geo Pocket Color that I'd never heard of until like today. That are like also RPGs. So there's like Kudelka, which Shannon mentioned earlier, then Shadow Hearts 1, Shadow Hearts 2, and the oft maligned Shadow Hearts from the New World, which I don't think we'll talk about too much. But yeah, it's fascinating. There's a sort of like one of these companies that broke off from Square in the 90s, and like in all fairness to them, they made 2 of my favorite RPGs of all time, and a bunch of other stuff. But like, just the fact that they only made 6 games before being dissolved is kind of tragic, because I feel like they had an interesting sort of unique voice in the RPG space that like I think a bunch of them ended up going on to work on like Lost Odyssey and stuff like that. So like you can definitely see a bit of Shadow Hearts in Lost Odyssey. But yeah, it never really sort of went anywhere from there, sadly.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame. You can say, you said Neo Geo Pocket Color, but you didn't bring up how it's they made one of the considered best games on there, which I never pronounced correctly. Facili?
Yeah,
Facelli?
Facelli.
Yeah.
And Dive Alert.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, look interesting. Dive Alert is sort of it looks fun just because it's like one of these games that like everybody was trying to do the Pokemon thing of having 2 versions of a game. And this had a Becky's version and Matt's version, which I find absolutely hilarious.
Love that. Is one woke and the other is DEI free? I assume Matt's version is based.
Absolutely, yeah.
DEI free.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they were renamed actually to Nautilus as well prior to Shadow Hearts Covenant coming out. But yeah, it's again like it's just one of these sort of sad things that like this company's completely disappeared, and I don't think like you'll ever see like a remaster or anything like that of these games, just because like who possibly owns the rights to this? Like there's, I think even the publisher is no longer with us, if I had to remember. Yeah, Aru's Entertainment, who are now just
Universal Entertainment,
owned by Universal or something like that. Yeah, it's very sad.
This had to got bought by somebody, and it's just in some huge, Saudi Arabian back catalog, and we'll never see it.
Yeah.
So that's speculation, as is everything I say.
No, but like, yeah, it's that would be the exact kind of thing that would happen to a game like that, unfortunately, where it's just like, yeah, somebody does own it, and it's part of a portfolio that's in like in a vault somewhere that nobody has looked at in 15 years.
Yeah, the thing with it too is that the company mostly makes pachinko, so we might get a Shadow Hearts pachinko machine.
I bet the soundtrack to that will be fucking incredible.
It'll be incredible. Yeah.
They're gonna bring back Hirota for it, and Hirota's gonna be like, "This is the greatest work I've ever done."
Yeah, absolutely. Well, at least we've got Penny Blood, I guess, happening.
Oh eventually. Yeah, I forgot about that. Is that going to be? Yeah.
I read about that, and I wondered if that's ever something that's going to come out, or I don't know.
I feel like there hasn't been much updates on it in a while, but I wish them all the best. I hope it's good, because I would like to play another game that's that's in a similar sort of vibe to this for sure.
Ooh, I'm Googled penny blood, and I'm getting a couple of posts that are just like the penny blood situation is likely dead.
Oh well, R.I.P.
So,
Penny Blood.
sorry, Shannon. Not to rain on your parade.
Yeah, well, it's because people aren't paying people with the Kickstarter money that they got. So you know what? I wish people would just be honest with their money. The VShojo thing happened, but I'm not going to bring too much VTubing into this conversation. But just all kinds of mismanagement with funds.
Yeah. What was the other game that was coming along with that? Because there was sort of like a Wild Arms game that was announced at the same
Armed
time.
Fantasia, or Armed
Yeah, Armed
Fantasia.
Fantasia, yeah. I'm assuming that's also long dead. If
That one's actually being okay from what I've read.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Nice.
Because yeah, both long dead RPG series that I would love to see a proper sequel to. See our previous episode on Wild Arms 3. That game is.
I think what these situations have taught us is that if you just have like a big bank account full of other people's money earmarked for stuff, like you can't just do that. You have to spend it all on Valorant right then. Otherwise, what are you even doing? You have free money.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so we'll jump into the next block of tracks. So I have first track was by Yasunori Mitsuda. Is called "Pleasant," quote unquote, "Rice Field of Light." We have two more tracks then by Yoshitaka Hirota. I have "Happiness," or sorry, apologies, "Smuggling Boat Manufacture," or sorry, quote unquote, "Manufacture Beltconveyor for Killers," which is a fantastic title. Then I have "Happiness 1," quote unquote, "Black Cat Floating in Blue Sky." And then the last track by Yasunori Mitsuda is "Kuihai Tower," quote unquote, "Misfortune Psycho Temple."
Psycho Temple, is that where the Church of Scientology worships? All right, I'm unplugging my mic. Good night.
Thanks, Reese. Goodbye. Yeah, that's a great tune. I sort of joked when we were there that it's sort of like fixing the boss battle theme from Chrono Cross. But yeah, it's definitely got some similar vibes with the violin and everything. But that first track as well, the Pleasant Rice Field of Light, is like such a Yasunori Mitsuda with the uilleann pipes and just that again. I wish I could figure out the if there's a name for that sound of bass, but it's all over sort of this style of like what's the word, like pan Celtic music. And again, mentioning the bass, I'm pretty sure that Hirota did all the bass on this because it's sort of, the sound is very consistent throughout the whole soundtrack in terms of the way the basses sound, and as a bass player, you definitely get the feeling that he put the bass front and center for a lot of stuff. And again, the second track, Smuggling Boat, just like the bass in that is so prominent, and it's just like it's so textured, especially with like all the little dissonant elements as well that sort of play into it as well. Yeah, so it's such an interesting soundtrack just from the way it sort of builds stuff in interesting ways that I don't think anybody else would have made the same choices.
Yeah, it's something that really, I think, elevates the soundtrack too, is that they are willing to make these choices to use dissonance in the music. And I brought up while we were listening, that's something that I really appreciate because, to take another word from you, it adds texture to the track. It really makes it stick out and helps the situation because, as the song title says, you are smuggling, you're in a smuggling boat,
Yeah.
right? So it does a good job of having kind of like almost a relaxed, everything's fine, and then all of a sudden these other elements start to pop in, and you're like, maybe everything's not okay, you know?
Yeah. I personally was a huge fan of Black Cat floating in the blue sky happiness. That to me was like just a very quintessential sort of all is well in this JRPG right now song. I have no idea what it plays. I assume just something idyllic either early in the game or during a break. But yeah, I feel like this game is uh kind of has a very great fundamental grasp of a lot of different moods and tones, and I appreciate the soundtrack for that.
Yeah, I forget where that happiness track plays, but yeah, it's there's definitely like a lot of like the game, for a lot of the stuff that it throws at you, it does sort of like it gives you all these nice little moments of um, just sort of like letting everybody relax for a while, sort of just giving you a little bit of a break between the sort of the heavier plot elements and stuff like that. And like yeah, those little tracks like that are very good, and like the map tracks that we listened to earlier, it's like those little moments of quiet and calm are really good, and really help to elevate then the sort of the more intense and maybe more silly elements of it as well. So we talked a bit about the battle system earlier and everything. And before we go into the next block of tracks, I think we should probably talk about the Berserk system, which is a really, really interesting and unique thing, part of the way the battle system works. So as part of your you have your standard health and magic points, but you also have sanity points. And again, this sort of speaks to the horror element. And the sort of the Lovecraftian part of it, but as you take actions, and certain enemies can also your sanity points drop, and if your sanity points go below 0, you berserk, and your characters just start hitting anything and everything. So like part of the battle system just becomes this sort of like managing your berserk or your sanity points to make sure that they're not constantly dropping underneath the 0 points, because like it is not good when one of your characters goes berserk.
No,
Yeah.
they'll just start attacking people and healing enemies and just doing whatever the hell they want. And
Yeah,
something that I do want to bring up, as we talked about Yuri, like fighting for control with himself and discovering who he is. He has the most sanity points,
yeah,
but you have to use them to transform and use his abilities, and he eats those up
yeah,
really quickly. Yeah.
yeah. It's pretty, yeah. It's not dissimilar to like a berserk status in any other RPG, but it can be so debilitating
Hmm.
to lose those sanity points, especially if you're like at the end of a long dungeon. You have items that can restore and stuff like that, but it's like, um, the longer a battle goes on, the more likely you are for somebody to into berserk mode. And it's like it will happen. It's not one of these things where like you don't have to worry about it for the most part. Like it can happen in the middle of a normal random battle, and it's just something you do need to watch out for. And it's like, and again, it's like, it's something that I find quite interesting, just as the sort of is part of the JRPG thing of like, it doesn't give you this sense that like random battles are not important, because that can be a problem I think with JRPG sometimes, where like you just sort of mash buttons through random battles until they're um but like this is one of those games that is like, no, we need to actually be paying attention to be managing these things throughout every battle. And it's like it doesn't have the worst encounter rate in the world as far as RPGs go, but there's definitely some dungeons where towards the end you're really starting to feel it.
Yeah, I
They
bet.
can get, and like none of the dungeons are especially long, but yeah, it can be quite tough. Just trying to sort of get through them, and it's good because it's sort of it gives you just one extra little thing to worry about that isn't going to that isn't going to impact every battle, but when it does, it can be massive, and I think that's a really interesting sort of uh, like push and pull with the battle mechanics.
Sanity is maybe my favorite mechanic in games.
Mm.
I feel like it's one that I intrinsically vibe with, where I'm just like, yeah, if I saw something upsetting, like if I see like an upsetting looking coyote on the street or whatever, that's definitely like a minus 15 to my sanity points. So it would make sense that, as you're dealing with fucked up things in video games, you're just like, I don't know if I have the spoons for that, and you just go ape shit. And I like this game's way of dealing with it, where it's like you can manage it, but it uses the kind of like confusion status effect that really doesn't, like, that is available in other RPGs, but I feel like doesn't usually get that much of a focus compared to some other status effects. So I definitely think that from what I've seen of kind of like the battle system, there is kind of like an interesting rhythm to it, where if you're
Mm.
like not hitting the inputs on the wheel of fate, you can be like, oh, Alice is gonna go fucking ape shit, isn't she? He's gonna go ape shit looking at this dog. All right, let's prepare.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's definitely
I haven't
definitely an
played
element.
it,
Is
but
like,
yeah.
like if you are worse at hitting those points, like hitting the judgment ring, it obviously makes battles go on longer. So like your SP can run out much quicker, and like it is restored at the end of battles, but it's like your SP pool is actually small relative. Like obviously some characters have more than others, but like realistically, like 10 turns is sort of your clock for that. Maybe a bit less depending on the character, but like that's not insignificant, but like and most battles will be less than that, but like if you're struggling with the Judgment Ring, it'll definitely make battles go on longer, and then you sort of end up having to deal with this as a consequence. Then
It's something that really ties it together, and some characters have less sanity than others. Reese actually said Alice, she goes berserk a lot because she's got like 3
yeah,
to start with.
Yeah.
She she's really useful. Healing is great. Holy damage is hard to come by. She does both of those things very, very well. She also loses her shit. She loses it very often.
I think, does she have the
It's
lowest
just-
sanity points in the game, or maybe tied with the lowest or something? But
I think she has the lowest, yeah.
yeah.
I have to look within and admit that I picked Alice randomly out of the hat because she's a woman.
Yeah.
You know, those broads, they're always losing their mind in the face of horror.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of the thing of it as well, is that like characters who are sort of more supernatural tend to have more SP. So like Yuri being a guy who can turn into monsters, the vampire, anybody who sort of deals with more supernatural things on a day-to-day basis tends to have higher SP, and then the normies just have like, they're just like, what the fuck is this shit that I'm looking at? Yeah, so it's a really interesting mechanic. Like, it's not, it doesn't account for every single battle, but it's just one of those things that you sort of be keeping aware of as you go through, and like especially for like boss battles and things like that. I think we'll jump into the next block of tracks anyway. So these are all battle themes. And again, like a lot of these are split by whether they're in China or Europe. So first track by Yoshitaka Hirota is China Battle, quote unquote, Brain Hopper. Then we have China Berserk, Ghost Jogging. Then we have Europe Battle, quote unquote, Near Death Experience. And then Europe Berserk Special Shortcuts, which is also with Ryo Fukuda. And then the last track is by Yasunori Mitsuda, is Mid Boss 1, quote unquote, China Ogre. I really now I was just thinking of it. Those vocal samples, I really think we should go and try and figure out where they come from because it reminds me of the Xenogears boss battle theme, and where that was recently recently, like a couple of years ago, it was discovered that like the samples they used were like from some guy's trial. That like
Wow.
a judge was like imposing a sentence, and they just took that line and put it into the Xenogears boss battle theme as just like essentially just random noise. You can barely make out what he's saying. But it's just like, yeah, now I'm wondering if there's more meaning to what the vocal samples are on that last track for sure. But yeah, one thing I'm just coming back to with all those is like the bass, like the Hirota's really sort of like bringing the bass on these ones, like just like the just so much going on with them. I really really love it. But yeah, I think it's not often we have stuff that's quite so difficult to listen to as the Berserk themes. But again, like considering how much we talked about like the sanity system previously, like it is cool that they just sort of have the this extra theme that plays when your character just starts to lose it, and like it's not enjoyable as such, but like they're really really well suited to what's going on.
Compelling, very compelling. Like I in my mind's eye, in my mind palace, I can just be like, "Oh, we have to stop this ASAP, otherwise I'm gonna get upset while Alice is also upset."
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent.
Very good at just being disquieting and making you nervous, which could potentially make you make more mistakes with the ring, which could potentially make more people go berserk and just create this giant
yeah.
like domino effect of you losing the fight that absolutely did not happen to me when I played this when I was younger. Absolutely not. Never did.
Yeah, it definitely happened to me a few times for sure. The especially the Europe one is so like, and like you were saying, it's so close to being a really good song. But it's just all those dissonant elements and everything like that just make it difficult to actually enjoy. But yeah, they're really interesting pieces of music. For a really interesting game, like again, just one of my favorite RPGs, the PS2 generation, and the PS2 is one of my favorite consoles of all time for RPGs. You know, I don't say it lightly that this is one of my favorite games on the system.
Yeah. Seems to be kind of like a unique title as well. Since the PS2 was, I think, not necessarily going for the look that Shadow Hearts has, with the kind of pre-rendered backgrounds and kind of like it to me it feels more like a PS1 game in terms of its style, but it doesn't like, it's not, doesn't have that level of graphics. It has the advanced PS2 hardware. So to me, Shadow Hearts looks very different than most comparable RPGs. I don't know if that's true or false, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Was this early on in the PS2's life cycle?
I don't recall. I don't think it was too early.
Okay.
Was it like 2001?
Yeah,
2002?
so like, yeah, I suppose it was a little later for us because it was March 2002. Yeah, and I suppose I
Okay. Yeah,
must
yeah.
have played it in like late 2002. So yeah, because I remember, yeah, I think that was when I got my PS2. Yeah, maybe even like early 2003s when I played it. So like reasonably early in the system's life cycle, but like, yeah, go ahead.
I think this is an interesting early PS2 game. I'm calling it an early PS2 game.
Yeah, it
I
was
don't care. Come to my
2001.
house about it if you disagree.
Yeah, when did the PS2 come out? 2000?
2000, yeah.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
year after. That's early. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty early considering how long of a life the PS2 had. Yeah, I suppose we can consider
Yeah,
that to
like
be
a
an early
year
one.
after the Dreamcast came out. That's a late Dreamcast game. But
Yeah,
Rip
sadly.
Dreamcast.
R.I.P. Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, no, it's like again, it's just I feel like one of those series that everybody who's played it loves it, but not that many people have played it. Um, and it's always interesting to introduce it to people because I think it's such a unique vibe. It's such a unique like battle system. The soundtrack is really really interesting and compelling on its own. Yeah, it's just yeah, truly one of my favorite RPGs of the era. And like when I finished the second one, it was one of those times where I was like, I guess I felt like I'd reached a peak in RPGs when I finished that second game, and I know we talked about the ending being a bit goofy, but like just that final dungeon is so cool, like, and just the way that game comes together in general is really really well done. And like I actually stopped playing RPGs for a while afterwards. I was like, I can just take a break from the genre for a while just to sort of appreciate how much I liked that last one. I think the only
Nice.
other one I played after that was like maybe Disgaea, which I got super into for a while. But like as far as traditional RPGs went, yeah, that was sort of the last one I played for a long, long time.
I
I
think that makes sense.
really,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say I really feel the same way, except I don't like a lot of PS2 RPGs.
Okay.
And I feel like Shadow Hearts is really good, but a big part of that is it really knew what it was going for, and the script wasn't huge just because it could be huge, which is an issue that I feel the PS2 has.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was worse in the PS1 era, in my opinion, because you go from things like nice, well done, like Final Fantasy VI. I feel like has a very good script. I feel like Final Fantasy IV is very similar. Um, and then you move on to let's go to Final Fantasy VII, which is like twice as large and has a lot of fluff in it. In my opinion, it's because they were able to use way more words, and I think the PS2 made that worse. But maybe I'm just old and impatient. Who knows? Um, but I feel like Shadow Hearts knows when to go into things, has tons of very good secrets. Speaking of FF again, I feel like the opposite of FF10, where I think the side quests in that game are monotonous and need to go away. I feel like all the mini games and side quests in Shadow Hearts like made sense and were just long enough and didn't make you tap X to dodge Thunderbolts 100 times. And like it's just a nice, wonderful little package on a system, and it's one of my favorite RPGs that I've ever played.
I think this game could use like a giant judgment wheel, like an orb of fate that you have to tap 100 times to do stuff. I think that would really improve things and not complicate the game's memory.
Yeah. Or maybe just a weird chocobo racing game
Yeah, yeah.
for yeah. As much as I do love Final Fantasy X, those mini games it's very hard to defend them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then the subsequent grind after doing the mini games to get your sphere levels up so that you can beat the secret bosses.
Mhm.
Again, hard to defend it even though I do it. Especially Lux sphere grinding is absolute fucking dog shit. But yeah, I think we've got one last block of tracks anyway, so we'll jump into that. I've just got some sort of like arranged versions and remixes. So first track is by Yoshitaka Hirota, main theme beat arrange, quote unquote ICARO beated version. Then two tracks by Yasunori Mitsuda. So we have the Astaroth 8-minute note mix and Town of Twilight ambient remix. I'm definitely going to have to fall on my sword for those last two tracks because I realized in the middle of listening there that both of them are actually from Shadow Covenant. Mostly just because I didn't realize or I didn't pay attention to the fact that the Arrange album was from all three games. I just assumed it was the first game. So, and I just forgotten that both of those tracks are from the second game, but both of which are absolutely excellent either way. So, quite happy to have listened to them in any case.
It's a little preview for the next episode. Not the next Shadow Hearts episode. Not
Yeah.
the episode after this.
Astaroth in particular is really one of the better boss battle themes from the game. I think it's like for one of the secret bosses. Yeah, the original theme, the ICARO beated version, is also, I think, sort of like it's just a rearranged version that's sort of improved for the second game or something like that. I forget the exact way they did it, or rather, improved for the second version of this soundtrack. Because the soundtrack that I have is the soundtrack plus, yeah, the original soundtracks plus. So there was two different versions of that soundtrack. So that was like a rearranged version for the second soundtrack. But yeah, it's a nice little track. But yeah, I think we sort of covered our final thoughts in the game in the last block. But have you any to go over that we didn't discuss, Shannon, before we finish up for the evening?
No, I think we've covered a lot of it. We talked about the soundtrack and the game, both just kind of throwing a lot of things at the table and tone changing a lot. Everything from rescuing the damsel and seeing corruption in the government and trying to fix it to a weird European spy with an eye patch that decides to follow you with a terrible French accent. Who some of her moves involve like radioing in support.
Yeah.
It's just a gem of a game. It's a banger of a soundtrack, and I think it's definitely worth a play and a listen for just about everybody.
Yeah, I mean it's quite easy to emulate, but it is sad, as we mentioned, that it's probably never going to see like a proper re-release. Like I wouldn't even expect something to do much to change it, but just like, polish it up and just throw it out on the PS5 or whatever. I would be quite happy to see that come out.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's the sort of thing the Switch is made for. These kind of.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever really see a version unless somebody who happens to be a fan just comes across the vault in the UAE.
If you're a listener and you have the rights to Shadow Hearts, put out a remaster.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are. All right, yeah. I guess with that we'll finish up. Shannon, do you have anything you want to plug going on?
Well, when we eventually do record, Misplaced Musings is a podcast that my friend Brian and I, who has also been on this podcast before, that we do where we muse about the various things that we like. It's typically video games and video game music and things of the like. We'll eventually release another episode at some point. When we do, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
All right, yeah. Reese, what have you got going?
I'd like to plug Teeps, who has very generously appeared on our podcast 3-4 times. I always love having you on. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And you can follow my dog shit in the show notes if you so desire.
Links in the show notes as always, and same as mine. Just go and check out the show notes. Links to the Patreon, the Discord, Blue Sky, anything else. I think there's an Instagram in there. I'm not sure if I've ever even updated the Instagram. But yeah, it's been great. I've been really wanting to do this episode or this soundtrack in particular for a while. For as long as I've liked this game, I've liked the soundtrack, obviously, and it was things where like, Having discovered Mitsuda as somebody I really, really enjoyed, and this is one of the soundtracks where like I found out he was on it. I sort of had to go and track it down as soon as I did. Shortly after playing the game, where I was like, "Oh, this music is really did it," and I was like, "Oh, bit of Mitsuda," and then discovering everyone else involved from it there as well. Yeah, we're going to finish off with the last track, which is the ending theme, quote unquote, Shadow Hearts. Yeah, thank you, Teeps. Thank you, Reese, and thank you for listening. Good night.
Thank you, Tom.